Picture a stormy Philadelphia night in June 1752. A middle-aged man stands in an open field, launching a simple silk kite into the storm clouds. The wind is fierce, there's pouring rain, and with every crack of thunder, he is risking immediate, lethal electrocution. Then, a single spark jumps from a brass key tied to the string to Franklin's knuckle. In that terrifying, electrifying fraction of a second, he proved that lightning was actually electricity and showed that human beings could tame the most violent forces in nature. Before we explore how Franklin harnessed that energy, this video is brought to you by Shasta Unfiltered. If you're in the North State and looking for honest news and entertainment, they have you covered. Scan the QR code on screen to subscribe today. Surviving that strike made Franklin a global scientific celebrity. He was now ready to apply that same experimental mindset to a much larger project, engineering the birth of a new nation. You wouldn't have guessed it from his start. In 1723, a 17-year-old Franklin ran away from his home in Boston, arriving in Philadelphia with nothing but 2 loaves of bread. He was the 15th of 17 children in a candlemaker's family, and he had exactly 2 years of formal schooling. There were no elite tutors or family connections to guarantee his success, yet he transformed from a penniless runaway into an indispensable founding father. He did it through a relentless, obsessive methodology, a genius that adamantly refused to stay in a single lane. Franklin's first lane was business. By his early 20s, he was mastering these heavy wooden printing presses. He devoured books at night, taught himself to write with unmatched clarity, and rapidly outpaced his peers to become one of the colony's most successful printers. He channeled that skill into publishing. This is the title page for his wildly popular Poor Richard's Almanac, packed with dense astronomical data, weather forecasts, and witty advice. It became a colonial bestseller and secured his regional influence. He weaponized those profits to build America's first civic safety nets. He looked at Philadelphia and noticed what was missing, so he funded and organized the country's first subscription library and its first volunteer fire company. When he realized his community needed better educational opportunities, he expanded his efforts again, laying the groundwork for what would become the University of Pennsylvania. For Franklin, wealth and media were never end goals. They were simply the practical tools required to engineer a functioning, self-sustaining society. This obsession with practical usefulness bled into his spiritual life. As a young man, Franklin embraced deism, the belief in a creator who governed the world through providence but didn't intervene directly. He judged every religion by a single, ruthless test. Does it produce good citizens and moral behavior? That pragmatic mindset explains his unlikely 30-year friendship with George Whitefield, a fiery evangelical preacher leading the First Great Awakening. Even though Whitefield constantly prayed for Franklin's conversion, Franklin printed his sermons and admired his ability to inspire civic virtue in enormous crowds. That exact same demand for utility governed his science. He didn't conduct experiments just to satisfy academic curiosity. If he was going to study something, it had to yield an immediate physical improvement for daily life. That rule resulted in a relentless stream of innovations.
He invented the lightning rod to protect homes, bifocals to cure his own failing eyesight, the cast-iron Franklin stove to heat rooms more efficiently, and even a pair of wooden swim fins. Whether navigating the complexities of theology or charting the exact currents of the Gulf Stream, his methodology never wavered. He demanded practical, real-world utility in everything he touched. By 1776, the American Revolution presented him with his highest-stakes lane yet. At 70 years old, when most men would have retired, Franklin sailed across the Atlantic to serve as America's ambassador to France. He arrived in Paris and adopted a highly deliberate diplomatic persona. Shunning elaborate European fashions, he dressed in plain brown cloth and a fur cap, playing the role of the simple, witty American scientist to perfectly charm the sophisticated French court. That charm offensive delivered a massive return on investment. He secured the critical alliance with King Louis XVI, bringing in the troops, ships, and money that made the victory at Yorktown possible. And as you can see here on the 1783 Treaty of Paris, he physically cemented that victory with his own signature. Yet amidst these sweeping national triumphs, he suffered his deepest personal failure. Franklin had raised an illegitimate son, William, who grew up to become the royal governor of New Jersey. When the Revolution broke out, William remained a staunch British loyalist, creating a bitter and permanent rift between them. William eventually died in exile in London. Ultimately, negotiating the survival of a fledgling republic with foreign monarchs proved to be a far easier task for Franklin than bridging the ideological divide within his own family. 2 years after his final, icy meeting with his son, the 81-year-old Franklin took a seat at the 1783 Constitutional Convention. Surrounded by younger, intensely divided delegates, he stepped into the role of the indispensable elder statesman. When bitter regional factions threatened to tear the convention apart, Franklin deployed his unique blend of humor and wisdom. He rose and reminded the room that, quote, God governs in the affairs of men, cooling tempers and actively keeping the negotiations from collapsing completely. He lived to see the Constitution ratified, passing away in Philadelphia in 1790, at the age of 84. 20,000 mourners followed the casket of a man who had started his life with absolutely nothing. Franklin used the end of his life to perfect his most significant invention, the art of political compromise. This provided the essential framework that made a modern, unified republic possible. When you read by electric light, check a weather forecast, or check out a library book, Franklin's industrious spirit is still quietly working in the background of your life. It is fitting that his face is anchored here, on the $100 bowl. It stands as a daily reminder of the American promise, that ingenuity, merit, and hard work matter far more than the circumstances of your birth. His story is a blueprint for anyone willing to use it. Relentlessly ask questions about how the world works, apply your talents generously, and build a better community around yourself. If you enjoyed this dive into history, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to check out our sponsor, Shasta Unfiltered, by visiting their website for honest news you can trust.